Here we are with Victoria, the most recently released film that we've ever done on this podcast, aka that flick with the long continuous take, aka Brian's third favorite flick of 2015, and fittingly, because of that, it was proposed by Brian that we play our conversation completely unedited. Now, as the editor of this podcast, I personally hate the idea, but you know what? If it plays well for you, dear listeners, then I can't complain, because really all I want is for our conversations to keep you entertained. And although I doubt that our conversation here is going to be as fluid as the movie, you should totally watch Victoria before even listening to us talk it over. Without further ado, welcome to Debt to Cinema. I'm Stephen Malmanex.
And I'm Brian Gillis. Like most people, we love going to the theater and catching the latest releases. However, it can sadly put a big dent in your wallet.
Fortunately, living in the digital age makes the viewing possibilities endless from the comforts of home.
Many of these films that you can see right from your couch, we're ashamed to say we missed, despite labeling ourselves cinephiles.
So join us as one or both of us cross off a title from our list of shame.
It can be an all-time essential classic,
or an underrated piece of cinema that's worth giving a shot.
Hell, it might just be some trashy film we want the other's opinion on. So sit tight and join us as we pay off our debts, $1 at a time. So it's oh, did you want to start?
Yeah, I was gonna start. This is my pick.
Okay.
I'm just gonna grieve you on one little thing. I really wish that you never told me this was a crime movie.
I think it slipped. I think I didn't tell you.
Slip,
I think I told our audience.
No, what happened was that I was talking about Too Late on the Dollar Review show, and then Victoria it came up inevitably because this is a movie that's shot in a long continuous take, and Too Late's a different version of that, comprised of a bunch of takes that have to deal with the limitations of film itself. But yeah, you let it slip at that moment. Like, I remember it specifically. I think you can go back at the episode and you said it's a crime movie, and that immediately caught my interest more. But now when I was watching this in the beginning, like, that kind of tainted that first hour for me, because I was just kind of watching it with this sense of dread of, oh man, things are going to go south for this girl. Like, I feel like it seems doomed at this point. Like, it was hard to invest in the love story moments that you praised earlier in the year, I think, when you put this on your top 10 as well.
Yeah, it was my third favorite flick of 2015. I looked at my list again, it still is. Comes a close second behind Mad Max and The End of the Tour. And more so just because those actually have like universal stories that anyone can relate to. You know, one's about intellectual conversations and figuring out who you are, and then the other's like saving the environment and like feminism and, you know, kick-ass action. And then this is just, wow. It's real timely. We're not recording this right when it's being released, but Relativity actually just snatched the remake rights to High Noon. So I would assume they're going to go for something like this. It's still,
you think they could do a long continuous take with High Noon?
Maybe not a single take, but just the way High Noon works. You know, it's supposed to appear that it's in real time. And so if Relativity doesn't keep that, it's not going to be a remake to begin with.
That would be a nice way to do a remake of that movie, because it would give you something different, and it would give you an excuse to do it.
And this is the proof that it can work, because this is one take. There's no cheats here. This is not Birdman. This is not, you know, the certain shots from Gravity and Children of Men. This is no cheats. And I told you, I mean, I guess I might have ruined the crime thing, but I told you no subtitles, and the reason is this film's called Victoria. It's from her point of view. She's in Berlin, but she doesn't speak German. And so if you know what the people are saying around her, it's going to ruin the verisimilitude, because everything about this seems like it's real. There's like two moments where it breaks that truth, where there's two quote unquote montages where you have non-diegetic music overtaking the film's dialogue and scoring, just to make it, I guess, the pace to go faster. The first one being basically right in the beginning when they're riding their bikes to the roof hangout, and then the second being when they go back to the dance floor at the club later on in the film, which I think was just just to bring it full circle, and the film's just real brilliant that way. Did you do any research on this?
No, I'm completely blank on this. I mean,
No?
though, going back to the music, I see. I don't want to be negative on this because I do
Hmm.
like the movie, but it feels like whenever I'm going to say something, I just feel like I got to be a bit more negative. Like, see, for me, this isn't so much a great film as it is a great experience. Like, this,
That's true.
yeah, like, I don't think this would have cut my top 10. Really, it would have definitely been an honorable mention, but you wanted to see this again. I think I just want to preserve this experience. I don't think a rewatch of this is really going to work for me. In fact, like I don't want to say it's hollow and it's thin, but there are limitations that I think a High Noon remake could definitely break thematically, whereas this it's just we know these characters for a brief point in time and there's no real depth to storytelling. It's just seeing how someone could get caught up in a situation that they don't expect it in, and it's fascinating just the idea that you have a long continuous take is that this flows really well and it's all within 2 hours and 15 minutes and so much happens and yet it feels organic. It never feels rushed. And it's just one of those things where at the end, like the biggest impression that this left on me was like, wow, like 1 hour you could be, or one moment you could be dancing at a club, just having fun. 2 hours later, you can be at the West End Hotel with someone that's bleeding to death. And in between that time, you can have a very nice flirtatious moment in a cafe where they're playing piano. There's a freaking heist that goes wrong. There's some more dancing in the club. There's a ton of hanging out around the streets of Berlin and rooftops and shit. And it's like, I mean, that to me, more than any long continuous take, it's just more mind blowing. It's one of those things in life where it's like, holy shit, like to think like how much time I spend sitting around just lazing in front of my computer, not doing
Hmm.
shit. And then it's like, wait, when I go out, like time kind of slows down and so much can get done. Like it's really amazing. It's so that's probably the best impression that this left on me is mainly that this take just made me realize how much you can do with time.
Yeah, I think this film, like, sort of to mirror that or echo it, it packs a lot into one, and not just in terms of what happens, but this is a romance, this is a comedy, it's
Mm-hmm.
an adventure, it's a tragedy. There's danger, there's cops and robbers, it's a night out in the town, and it defies genre. Like, I might have called it a heist flick because at the end of the day, that's kind of what it
It
is.
is,
That's the
yeah.
crux
Like,
of it. But I think it's just as much a romance. I think the opening 45 minutes or so, up until that piano sequence in the cafe when the shit hits the fan,
uh
when it
huh.
gets real, it's just as strong, or if not stronger, than any of the before movies
What's
are.
the best element in the movie? I mean, it's part of what's also kind of nice about the before movies is
Hmm.
really that language barrier. Like, even though Julie
Yeah,
Delpy, she's much more fluent in English than these
Delpy.
guys are. Delpy, yeah. But like, there's just something about it where, like, I don't know if you have this from personal experience as well, but when you're just communicating with someone in a different language and
Yeah,
either neither of you are that fluent in it or just one of you isn't, and it's like
there's a
yeah,
romance
you're
to it.
trying to express something, but the words don't necessarily come out, and there's just something that's like far more endearing that just draws you in more and more because
Hmm.
it's like a pet, like you see a cat and they're trying to express something and you want to understand what it is, but you can't exactly figure it out, but you're trying your hardest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I had someone come into work the other day who I'm not sure if he was deaf or mute, but he didn't converse with
Mm-hmm.
language. And I don't know sign language, sadly.
Yeah.
So he was kind of signing or like using gestures to try to articulate what he was trying to get across. It wasn't
Were you at
working, so he
least
asked
able
for a
to
pen and
write though?
paper.
Yeah.
Exactly. You got a pen and paper. He wrote it down. I was like, oh, and then like I was really just caught with my pants down. It's like, what am I supposed to do here? I know exactly what he's trying to do, but can you understand me?
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like this, but then even more so, yeah, I have, met several people that were foreign exchange students, or I've been in other countries and interacted with people that don't speak English.
Yeah.
And it's real fun when, they don't expect me to know Spanish and then I can work it that way.
It's
But
a
yeah, you
it's
just like,
way
you,
more
you
interesting
try.
though when you're like sharing those personal
Hmm.
details, but you cannot like fully express what you're feeling, but like you just have to take a leap of faith and believe that they're still going to understand you, and at the end of the day they kind of do, but you can't be too sure, but they're still willing to talk to you, and that's a good sign.
Yeah.
And it's like it's just so fucking cool how relationships can work like that when there's a language barrier.
And this film, I mean, it's a German film, takes place in Berlin.
Mhm.
Most of the cast and crew is German. The only person that isn't is Lia Costa, who is a Spaniard. And she's the strongest thing in this film. I'm surprised she hasn't been cast anything after that's been out because this is already a year and a half old now or something. Huge on the festival circuit last year. Didn't get any love from the critics. This wasn't on year-end list. It wasn't nominated for it wasn't even eligible for a Best Foreign Film Oscar because, and I quote,
Of the
most
English
of the
language?
yeah, because
Seriously?
most of the language is in English, which is
Yeah.
fucking stupid. Like that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Um, but it's this yeah, I think maybe I perhaps spoiled it for you, and you just spoiled it for our entire
Well,
audience.
we were gonna talk about it anyway.
For
Like,
sure,
how
but
this is a
I,
spoiler-ridden show.
yeah,
How do we not?
I'm
Yeah.
just saying, I went into this completely blind. All I knew is what you knew.
Mm-hmm.
It's a single shot. I think that's what everyone's supposed to know. I think the poster says like one shot, one night, one unforgettable movie, or something like that. And I still feel that way. I think it starts dragging towards the end once it goes into high octane mode and everything is like falling apart. I think the film kind of falls apart, like those final 25 to 30 minutes, like after the shootout occurs. But everything before that, it just even this watch, like just as great,
I was.
just as awe-inspiring. The fact that they could do this and that, like the shaky cam, it
Mm-hmm.
works with the film. Or the fact that you never see any of the crew really, you don't see reflections of the camera, you don't see anything. Like in regular movies, you'll catch those goofs. Or I can't remember what I was watching the other day, but someone in the reflection of their glasses, you could see the filmmakers. And I was like, was that on purpose? I'm
Yeah.
not sure. And here it's so masterful. And this was actually the third time they attempted it. They did three takes. This was the final one. I think they could only afford three takes, so we're really lucky that it got done.
Well, I did. I
Because
didn't read this, but I heard something like they convinced investors that if there was a problem, they would just have a jump cut somewhere and give it the
maybe there,
illusion that there'd be a free take or
I
full.
think
Yeah.
there is a jump cut here, kinda, when they,
In the
s-
courtyard, there could have been, but
yeah,
like, I mean, I don't really care that much, honestly. Like, I
it's
am not
still
one of those
impressive.
people that likes to praise like long continuous takes. Like, whenever it's
Hmm.
brought up, it just feels like it's that thing where you have to bring it up. But I mean, to credit this movie, I was not thinking about that.
You forget about it.
Much more invested. Like at once the heist starts getting together and you're trying to figure out what the fuck is happening. And part of the benefit of that is that yeah, the subtitles were off. I did go back and rewatch that scene because I did want to know what
What
they
the
were
bad
saying
guys
after I
saying.
saw the movie. But
Hmm.
and like I gotta say maybe for a rewatch that could be part of it because like I mean rewatching some of those scenes like it does become clear to me that even though this is Victoria's story and you're getting it from her perspective, then afterwards it's just as much these guys and their story, and to see the things that they're saying and how they're playing off each other and to understand that even if Victoria can't understand that, it's still
Hmm.
worth seeing. And like I would think that saying hey don't watch it that way, that does kind of undercut their performances and the work that they put in those characters. But I would say I'd stick with you on that yeah, for first time try going in without the subtitles, stick with her
So
perspective, and then you got a fresh way of looking at it after.
it just raises its illusion of reality because if you know what they're saying, you're in on it. Like she to her, she's like, "What's going on? You're here to get the coffee? Or you're stealing this
It's like
car?
my German's
You're
not
doing
perfect, but
this?"
I was able to catch a few things on like as far as what they're saying. But I mean, even then, you're still able to understand the gist of it. Like, it is visual storytelling. Like, even if you have the
Hmm.
subtitles, you're still gonna understand what's going on.
Yeah,
Like,
just
the only thing is, I guess you're just much more worried for her, and it is effective that way. But it's still worth checking out. I think at some point, just not the first time necessarily. I agree with you on that.
there's some crazy manic acting here. Like it doesn't even seem like acting; it seems real, and not just the guys who have the craziest names ever. You got Boxer, Foots, fucking Zonner. Um, Victoria's not that strange, and then and then you
No.
got Blinger. Like they just have the weirdest, just like street hooligan names. But you have this really great sequence. It's probably right about the halfway point when you finally get Victoria and Sonner alone and they're in the coffee shop and they're just having frank conversation and they're not talking about anything particular. They're kind of drunk. The night's winding down. And, they start talking about the piano. He's like, ha ha ha, like I'm the son of Mozart or whatever. And then you get that real frank, very emotional, really raw moment. The only time here where it doesn't seem like a party. where she's talking about her career and the conservancy and how they
It kind
told
of
her that
just
she.
explains why she's in Berlin in general. Just one of those people that's trying to
Oh,
get lost for a while.
more than that, I think it just explains the kind of person she is, that the reason why she would go on an adventure like this, the fact
Hmm.
that for almost her entire life, she dedicated 7 hours a day to playing the piano. And now she's lost that. She was told that she's not good enough. But even more so, you get that sequence where she's playing the piano. She's playing the Mephisto waltz. And it starts off just like the film. It's really whimsical. It's fun. It's all over the place. And then it gets very serious, very dark. And then it just ends abruptly. And I think that's a perfect metaphor for what the film is, because the final shot of this film, well, the whole thing's a shot, but the final image of this film is just like a postcard shot of Victoria walking into the background. Like, you don't need closure here. You don't need to see what she's doing with the money or where she's going, if her life's going to continue, if she's going back to Spain.
It's like you get enough
It
that
doesn't
this is a
matter.
very brief moment in her life, and like
Hmm.
it's just like even though I don't think many of us can relate to being brought into a caper, like yeah, I think in some ways you can at least relate to being brought into circumstances just right
Yeah.
away with no familiarity and being willing to dive into some like that for someone else. And like the only reason why that works, I think, is because that cafe scene is so good, and like
Yeah.
it's though part of me like was still just kind of like thinking, oh no, Get Out. Like that's the problem with me thinking this was a crime movie. Is I was just thinking, please no, Get Out. This guy's trouble. Like just don't do it, whatever it was. But I was still invested enough into it to just be thinking that as a character, just like, hey, please don't make this decision. I wasn't criticizing the movie in the way where it's like, don't make this character do something stupid.
It's
Like
more like
it's
you,
like
you
I can
like them
totally
so
see
much.
how you're brought into this, especially after you opened yourself up in that moment.
Hmm. There's you said great visual imagery. There's just some really smart things here that are done with the camera. Like when they're in that cafe and
Hmm.
you get the phone call, Sonner goes outside, he's with his buds. She's inside on one side of the glass, and they're outside on the other side. Like she's on the inside looking out, or the outside looking in. Like there is a literal divide between them. Like as soon as that happens, and then they go into the garage with the guns and the drugs, just everything about that sequence, it's like, oh fuck this, like this is a whole nother movie. Like the fact that they clearly couldn't afford or even block what you call it. Not, I was gonna say block, but yeah, that's the right terminology. They couldn't make it possible for her to park the car, the camera followed them into the bank, and you saw the heist. That would have taken God knows how
That
many
would have been
times with the
insane. But
squibs
then
or whatever. Like
again, like
it would have been too
also
much.
you got to have the tension amping up when she's just sitting in the car and the car
That's what I'm
dies out.
saying.
Yeah.
And yeah, they make it perfect. Like
Like
how can we get the audience to be just as intense as it would be inside the bank? Oh, how about the car stalls? And then she's panicking because they can't get away in time. And it's like, oh my God, like the tension is palpable there. Like you can taste it. Like it gets so fucking crazy for that, what, like 15 minutes, that maybe 20, where it's actually like a gritty heist film. And I mean, that's kind of what it is. Like, as I said earlier, though, it is more things than that. And I think this film defies genre. You can't peg it to one thing. Like, you
that's
sell
why I
it as a single
hesitate.
take.
Yeah, I hesitate to call it anything other than an
Hmm.
experience. Like this
It's
is
Victoria.
yeah, I'm like it's you've talked about VR so much. Like this would be that ideal thing where you are a fly in the wall and you can see how things go down. Did you watch it that way in this viewing at
No,
all?
you
No,
can't.
not
You
yet.
can't take a 2D film and put it in
All
VR.
right.
What you can do is watch it in a VR movie theater, but it would still be a 2D experience.
Yeah.
There's no way to turn this into a 360 film, and I don't think I would want to. Like the camera is very purposeful here. Making you see certain characters at certain times. For instance, when after they're successful with their heist and they go back to the nightclub where the film begins, you get the camera looking at Sonner and Victoria on the outskirts. They finally kiss after like an hour and a half together, where they're clearly crazy about each other. And then the next thing you see is the camera pans to the right, and fucking Boxer and Blinger are naked on the dance floor, getting all kinds of crazy. And then it goes back to them, they're making that. Goes back to them, they're dancing. They're throwing money all around, doing the typical, we just got a whole bunch of money, let's spend it really stupidly. We're gonna get caught, of course. And if you were to have the freedom, if this was in VR and you were looking just like Victoria and them making out, you would have missed the funny stuff behind you, the theatrics, and it's very intentional. Like you can tell if a film of this caliber, because it's, this isn't a best picture of all time type of thing,
Hmm.
but just the technical majesty here, you don't want to be able to elude something on screen just because you have the freedom to watch something else. So I disagree. This wouldn't be the one in the same way that Birdman wouldn't be the one. Like that was a very purposeful movie. You see exactly what they wanted you to.
I was
And
theorizing. I wasn't really
Mhm.
trying to insinuate that that would
No,
be
yeah,
it,
I'm
but
not
I would like to
shitting
imagine
on
at
your
least
idea.
that that could be a fitting
Yeah, well,
experience
there
for it.
there are VR things that I've experienced that are kind of like that, where they repay it or revisit because you can notice things that you didn't initially. There's that like invasion short, I think it's on within VR. That's okay. Like you can, pinpoint what you look at. It's like, do I want to look at the bunny, the UFO, whatever? And VR is going to be interesting that way. But I think this is kind of the in between. This kind of does prove what a virtual reality experience is like in the traditional sense of the medium. Because with this, first off, I think it would make you sick if a VR camera was in motion.
Especially in
They
that
kind of
courtyard.
like it has to be stationary, or it can like in terms of Sam Esmail's Mr. Robot experience, it can elevate up and down or move laterally, but it has to be stationary. You can't have shaky cam. Um, but yeah, there's not much to say about this film. We can just talk about
Well,
its technical prowess.
though,
Well,
speaking of technical, I do have just something that really bothered me, and I just got to get it out of
yeah,
the way. Is the music?
yeah.
I
Like I said, the montages once they start doing the non-diegetic stuff, and then you actually get scoring,
like it
it takes you out of
it
it.
kind of works in that you I think in some ways like it's kind of healthy to have that reminder of, oh right, you are in a movie, like don't get
Yeah.
sucked in too deep, don't get too invested, like that is there some sort of relief. But where it really bothered me was during the courtyard shootout, and that's where I just felt like I was watching it and I was just thinking, no, this would be far more intense if I wasn't reminded that I was watching a movie. Instead, I got this music going on here, and a bunch of these guys are getting shot, and like I can't really be invested in the danger here, or like my fear level is not
hmm
going up for the safety of these characters that are here. Like I'm no longer worried. I just feel like I'm watching a movie, and it's that was something where just specifically in the courtyard, I felt like it really would have been better if it wasn't there.
I I have to believe it's for one of two reasons. Either the director slash cameraman was telling the actors something, or it's for pacing.
I mean, it is a
Because
choppier like moment, like especially the way that the camera moves in there. It's like it's very chaotic, but yeah,
I
I just really wish that it wasn't there in that specific moment. That's where it bothered me, and I was just like thinking, no, this has to go. It's not working.
Yeah, I really like the use of non-diegetic on the second dance floor because you really buy into their love story. Um, but I have a feeling just it wasn't a brisk 2 hours and 20 minutes without any kind of music. Like it probably dragged. And so it kind of connects the dots. Like I said, it's almost a montage. Like it isn't a series of angles or different cuts or any kind of editing to make time pass faster. But the fact that you do get music seemingly out of nowhere, I think makes it, you're like, oh, okay, they're just going, this isn't important. They're just walking
Hmm.
here. Um, because who knows? Like I said, maybe the actors flubbed their
Well,
lines
it's just like
or
it's
they were
such a
saying something that
dramatic
wasn't
moment that it
natural.
feels like it's music that's being put there for you to feel something, as opposed to really the movie actually earning it. Like
I think it still earns it though. Like it's a
it
mix
does,
of
but
both.
it's kind of like what you were doing so well, and you kind of brought it down just a little bit by doing that. Like if I was left without any music, like it's a nitpick, admittedly, but I really think it would have been stronger, and it would have just burned much more of an impression. And as they kept going, that would have stayed with me instead of just seeing a plot B where it's like, oh, so they died and they're moving on. Well, okay, I'm just gonna focus on these guys now.
Yeah, I haven't checked back, but I'm pretty sure in our year-end bonus episode that I talk about the music kind of in the similar sense we are right now,
Hmm.
and then also probably in my letterbox review because yeah, it's probably the biggest problem with the film. It stops it from being a masterpiece because you have this real great illusion of reality and then it's broken. Like that's what non-diegetic music does. Like when you're on the dance floor the first time, you have that pumping whatever it is, you have
Well,
that
it's
really
like it's
loud
that
like
and the out of
EDM.
focus light, and it's like you are just kind of like slipping into this character's life, like in this little moment. It's a really nice way to bring you into it,
Hmm.
is you're just
And
kind of slowly slipping in there with the music and that shot and everything.
like it works so effectively the first time on the dance floor that I have to believe the second time they're there, it would have been just as good. And you can just sense that, even if you're not trained in film theory or anything, you know when music doesn't fit a mood. And the music does here, it's just the mood for most of the film is this could happen to anyone at any given moment. I mean, maybe not to this extent. I doubt many people out there have ever been involved with a bank robbery, but even still, you believe Victoria is a real person. Like everything about her performance, when her flirtations, her tears, her laughter, her drunkenness, the bike riding, just everything about it. Like you can buy into it. Even, and I only caught it this watch is that maybe I was looking for it. Her hair becomes greasier throughout the film. When they go to the hotel at the end and she secures the
Yeah.
hotel room, she goes to the bathroom, she washes her hair. If you're looking at that in the bathroom, like her hair was like really greasy. I didn't notice that. Um, I still have to buy this one for $1. I'll recommend this to anyone that even pretends to like movies because I've never seen anything like it.
I mean,
Like maybe the original Blair Witch Project or Birdman to a far lesser extent because that one is very constructed.
well, I think Gravity gets points before Birdman because it kind of does the same thing in some ways. It's just Birdman said, no, let's go full out and do
Well,
the entire
it's
illusion.
it's more in the sense of reality. I mean,
Hmm.
in Birdman, yeah, there's like the dream state stuff, but when it comes to gravity, it's like, okay, how many people here, raise your hand, have been to space? You know what it's like to be an astronaut, do you? How about surviving this disaster?
Well, maybe it's just
Whereas,
that I like Gravity a lot better, and I like rewatching Gravity. Like I really love that movie, and I seriously
yeah,
feel it's
I,
one of the
s-
best movies of the decade.
I still have to watch in 3D. I had like
Oh man,
started
you
it when I got
really,
my Google. When I got my Google VR, it was the first thing I watched on it,
I love
and
that
I was like,
movie.
"Yeah, I was like, I'll watch this shit." And I have an ultraviolet copy. I have the Blu-ray, but my parents didn't buy the 3D Blu-ray. I mean, why would they? They don't have a 3D TV. But eventually, like that could be the kind of movie I would love to see something like Gravity in VR
Yeah,
in the far future. We're talking like 15, 20 years from now
yeah.
when they finally figure out the language because something like that when it's all shot on a green screen anyway it'll be perfect. It just will work. Like I have to imagine even how much James Cameron doesn't buy into the current state of virtual reality technology, like Avatar 3 or 4 will probably be
Well, it'll
available.
utilize it, but
Yeah.
hey, at some point, I don't want to knock on Cameron, but no matter how big of a pioneer you are, there's just some things that I don't know. You might get too old, and you just might not be on the same train or not as receptive to. Yeah, it
No,
hits
I
everybody,
don't think
maybe.
that's what it is. I don't think he, like I said,
I don't.
it's
I,
not
I
that
don't
he
want to
doesn't
make
believe.
assumptions here, but
No, it's
yeah.
not that he doesn't believe in virtual reality. He just doesn't think the generation we're in right now is where people should be spend their time. Like he thinks, like in 5 to 10 years from now, when the technology is equivalent to digital, and this film is the perfect example of
Hmm.
why digital filmmaking is powerful. You could not do this on film. It is
No,
impossible.
I mean the
You wouldn't be able to
closest you
film
could
for more
get
than 15
like
minutes.
the closest you could get is Too Late, which I still think that's also a mandatory must watch for different reasons, though it's not entirely fair to compare the two because they both got different strengths and weaknesses. I
Uh-huh.
just want to bring this back a little bit on the technical because we're talking about the shots and yeah,
The
okay,
shot.
the shot, a long take is nice. The way it's blocked, I mean, the fact that they're able to get all these extras in the same places, like, I mean, that's kind of insane to think of, but what really, really impressed me is the fact that this audio is so clean
Yeah.
throughout the entirety. I mean, I'm assuming that they're all wearing lavaliers that are hidden around, but how the
Even
hell
still.
do you get that? Like, they might have hidden
Like
boom
stuff
mics in
like
some locations, but
it's not even the dialogue too. It's stuff like heavy breathing
uh huh.
and sobbing. Like
It's like
you,
maybe it's ADR, but then
no, I
again,
don't think
I
so.
doubt it too. Yeah. Like I'm sure
Because
they might
I
have a camera mic just like as a backup or something. Like or they have to have more than one mic, like
definitely,
for
but I
sure.
really noticed it this time. Once like the phone call happens, once the shit goes into high gear, every once in a while you get mic pickups of just Victoria breathing like and it really puts you in you're like, oh shit,
Yeah,
like
it's like you're
this is
here.
very
It's a flaw
serious.
from the audio that you just have to keep in there.
No, I don't think that's what I'm saying. I don't think that's a flaw. I think that is a
Well, no, I mean, like, is it
purposeful
an
flaw.
obvious mic pickup? Like, are you getting
No, yeah, this happens multiple times.
like the distortion from it?
No, not distortion, just like it sounded exactly how I just did it. It's not broken or anything. It's just you can hear her breathing. Like
Hmm.
it is a part of it. In the same way when Sonner is dying towards the end, you have him like
Just
coughing
gagging and
or
everything.
or like
Yeah.
saying every once in a while, like it's so cold. Like technical, when they're in the hotel room, the sheets go from perfect. He gets in the sheets, and then they get over time bloodier and bloodier and bloodier.
Hmm.
And then he fucking turns the TV on, and they're able to get the footage from the news of what's going down.
Well, they probably pre-recorded that for sure, and I'm
I'm
sure that when it's
obviously
cutting away to
they
that TV, then they have someone in the background putting blood in there, or they're popping some squibs or
even
something.
still it happens at such a rate,
If yeah, I know,
and
like
it
it feels great when they do it. I'm just saying, like that's probably how they did it, you know?
could you imagine being one of the people in that hotel room? Like they're going, okay, we're gonna do another take. They got the walkie-talkies. We're gonna do another one. We're gonna do another one. And they're sitting in the hotel with like their fake blood and like the TV remote, hoping the batteries are good, just hanging out for literally 2 hours until they finally come into the hotel. Because you know someone did that. Like
It's
the
like they all
couple with
got
the
ready at like
baby.
5 in the morning or
Yeah,
something. Yeah, 3 times
the
in a row.
the couple with the baby, like they had to be waiting in that room for a very long time. And they got to watch some of the shooting happen too, like both turn sense of the word. But yeah, this film starts at night. It ends during midday. Natural lighting's hard enough, but when you're doing with a natural time progression like this, if you fucked up, like that was it. Like I did a quick trivia recap on IMDb before recording. We're talking about how emotional when the car stalls.
Hmm.
The reason for it truly being emotional and it seems real is apparently the car did stall for real. And so
I was
the
gonna say,
director's
yeah.
in the back of the minivan yelling at them like, hurry the fuck up. We're gonna lose it. This is gonna be we can't do another one. We can't do it. So like that's why they're freaking out in the car and they're like, make a right, no, make a left, make a right. Like you could take just clips of this film. You could take just like a quick
I
little
wish there was a behind the scenes of that moment, honestly.
I wish there was behind the scenes for the whole thing. If there's
Yeah.
cameras rolling on an entire
Just
take.
someone like following them from the distance.
But if you take like 10 to 15 minutes at pretty much any time in this film from any sequence and you just cut that and put it on YouTube and showed it to someone, they would be impressed. And when the whole film is just a series of those, it's hard not to be.
I would
Like you
hope that
might
they
not,
experience this though as a whole instead of experiencing it in
yeah.
chunks, obviously. But yeah, I
I'm
see
just
what you're
saying though,
saying
you
though.
you could do it, you could do it. And I really hope because there are flaws with this film. Not all the actors are great. Like Fuss, for instance, he's not important.
Hmm.
He is important. He's a
He's
pivotal
the reason
character.
why the whole thing happens.
Yeah, he's the reason. But even though he's drunk, he's the worst thing in this film. That's why he disappears. Like you could tell that his casting wasn't important. But when you take out like the acting variables and the action and the weird music or the sometimes when things get blurry and out of focus and the
Hmm.
camera kind of gets jumbled, when you take out all the flaws, just the fact that something like this exists, it's not alone. I think there's like a Russian film called Arc from 2002 or something that does the same thing, which I'll have to see at some point in time. Just the fact that this film exists in today's cinematic heavy world and no one talks about this despite it being on Netflix. I don't think I've met a person that's seen this thing.
No,
I've
no
recommended to
one
people,
I know knows about
personal
this yet.
and on the internet. Yeah. Like this was on my end of the year list for a reason. Like it is a must see, not just for a period, but from last year. Like it stood up against all the films I saw. It could have been because it was one of the final things I saw of the year. I think I saw it like 2 days before we did that bonus episode. But even still, like when I think you said back in February or April that you were thinking about picking this one, and I went, no, I'm not
Just give
ready.
it
I'm
more
not ready.
time, yeah.
But yeah, over the last month or two, I've been thinking about it a lot. And maybe it's because you raised that it was going to be a nominee, a selection. But even still, like I have been thinking about it. It's something that sticks with you, for a lot of reasons. For me, it's because I revere those Linklater Before series, and this is a great successor to those. But then also, it might not be the most memorable story. Not much happens, but sometimes the films where nothing happens are the most memorable. And I think that's why it's a powerful film. Like, you're not going to walk away going, oh, I learned that there are janitors out there that are mathematical savants. But you do learn something. You learn something about these people, even if only one of them has anything really important to say. And I can't recommend it more. I'd buy this for 5, 10, $20. It's just a fantastic piece of filmmaking, and I can't wait to see what Steven Schiller, the director, does next, because he's no one knows who he is either. Like this is completely under the radar, despite being on Netflix, and it's been on Netflix for like 6 months now, 7 months, which is just ludicrous.
Well, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I enjoy it on I don't think the same level as you, even though I did definitely enjoy it. I feel like this is definitely a great experience. And it's like you said, like, this definitely did stay with me for hours after I saw it. Like, I
Mm.
definitely felt like I just experienced something. I mean, for me, what this is it's like, I'm blanking on the guy's name, Edwin S. Porter, the guy that did the Great Train Robbery.
Yeah.
Like a very early 20-minute film that basically, even if you haven't seen it, everyone in film school knows about it. It's one of the early films that kind of defines cinematic language or just for storytelling in general and everything that you see. Or just, I think that's the first chase movie too.
It's it's more, I think with that one it's more so it created
It's
like
very
true
early, like,
editing.
yeah.
Like it's less so the language because what
But
the
we
Lumiere
do,
Bros were doing and what Edison was already doing in his Black Maria Studios, like there was already being established.
but as far as how
Because
films are put together, like, yeah,
yeah,
especially
it's in
with
terms of
editing,
the
like you just
editing.
said, it's like that. This, to me, it feels like it's the same thing for now. Like, I wasn't thinking about this earlier, but you brought up the High Noon remake, and we're
Mhm.
just spitballing here is that, hey, if that is a movie where you could remake that, you could do it in a long, continuous take, and you could make something that's thematically just very rich and deep, go with so many characters, and just there's a lot that you can do there because this movie is pretty thematically thin. It's more based on the experience. If it's not going to be that High Noon remake, it will definitely be something down the line. But the point is this is a first. Like, I feel like this is a very pivotal movie that's in history right now for cinema, and if it's not recognized that I'm confident that it will at some point. It has to be. We have this
This
documented here right now. We're saying it. If nobody else is saying it, like, I don't think I'm ever going to regret saying this unless cinema completely dies, in which case that would be crazy because digital cameras do make this possible and everybody's got one in
not
their
even,
pocket.
yeah, not even digital cameras, just phones. Like phone
Yeah.
cameras, look at the iPhone 7 Plus, are just as strong, if not stronger, than mini DV and high 8 and VHS and so many mediums that were established before. Like just in terms of quality, it trumps Super 8. And look at the kind of films people were making with that. Even Super 16 to a certain extent
Hmm.
doesn't look as good as a 4K camera.
Well, like, yeah, debatable. I guess as far as the home movie, like, it always depends on what you make with it. But yeah, I don't think you can't make something like this with film. Like, I love Too Late. It's one of my favorite movies of this year. That's a true achievement in filmmaking. I am not going to say that for this. I want to call it something else because this is something different, and I don't know exactly what the term for it is
It's
yet.
cinema verite, man. Like
But
that
it
term is
feels
used
like
for
it feels
document.
like see
Mhm.
this just feels like something new where it's just like I feel like I want some new term to be coined to define this, not have it being defined by somebody else's pre-existing rules of what film are because this definitely does not feel like anything that exists beforehand.
That's what I'm saying. It's cinema verite. It's cinema truth. Like that term is used for documentary filmmaking. It's mostly like D.A.
Yeah,
Pennebaker
but still,
stuff.
like, this is very much controlled, even though, like,
Those
there's
things were
improv going on
controlled
here,
too.
but
Like if you watch those old Pennebaker films, like we'll use Bob Dylan's "Don't Look Back" as an example. Oh man, read some shit about that film. That whole thing is fabricated, and it's still regarded as one of the best like musical or like rock and roll documentaries of all time. It has like the first form of a music video and it's still considered a documentary. The fact that this is truth. Like everything about this seems true. Like you know it's a movie. It has to be a movie. There's no way someone could follow someone with a camera for this long and capture all these things without them looking at the filmmaker going, "Turn that shit off. We just robbed a bank." But at the same time, if just like the first Blair Witch Project in 1999, if you didn't know it was fake, if no one told you it was fake, if the internet didn't exist or exist in the way it does now, and you saw it for the first time unaware, you would believe it was real. Like it has that feeling. It creates that feeling. Like you're sweating with these characters. You want them to fall in love. Like when they kiss for the first time, there's a wave of relief that wipes over you. Like, thank God it's taken so long. Like everything about it, you're like, oh, they're dancing naked. Oh my God! Like I've done that. Like put some fucking clothes on. This is a movie. I just saw your dick. I didn't want to see that. Like you buy into it. You might not agree with all the choices here
Well,
artistically.
no, that's not it. I
We've
think we just
had
got completely like I know what the definition of cinema verite is.
no, yeah,
I
I
never
don't.
like to accept it as such. Like I keep wanting to think like it's true reality, not like as a style, even though
No,
technically that is what it is.
it's
Is
not
that
reality.
yeah, no, is that it is more of a style of bringing that documentary sort of style like up front and making it feel real. But I keep in my head, I know that's not what it is, but that's just how I like to use it.
I mean, that's
It's wrong,
how
I
I,
know, but yeah.
no, that's how I use. I haven't filmed many things, but the first thing I ever directed was like this, but with editing. Like I tried to establish lots of things happening in frame at once. It was, there was a story structure, but there were no lines. It was all
Is
improv
this Harry and Harriet?
because no, this is high school.
Okay.
And the reason is if you're recording something, if you're actually acting in something and you have dialogue, it's not you. You're trying to embody a character. You're trying to tap into the emotions. When you're doing something and you have the free reign to improv, not just to improv, but to speak in the way that you would, or in the sake of this film, to flirt in the way that you would, to just for a second there glance at someone for too long and they catch it. Like those things that you don't usually see in a film because it's a cutaway or it's done again or you in the back of your head is like, well, what if this was David Fincher and there was 75 takes to make it the one I liked? Like that doesn't exist here. The fact that it raises the bar in terms of everything, to be honest. It's inescapable triumph, even if it's not perfect.
I
If
mean,
it was
I
perfect,
can't
you would
call
probably
it
hate it.
perfect because it feels new. Like, when something
That's what
feels
like
new, you can't
if this
necessarily.
felt that's what I'm saying
Yeah,
though. If this
I know,
felt
I agree.
perfect, it would probably be a bad thing. It would seem too constructed. Like the little flaws here buy it makes you buy into its reality, our reality. Like, I've never been to Germany, but I have to expect it to be like this. If you're leaving the club at 5 a.m. and you're walking down the street and you go steal some beers and you're drinking them while dancing in the middle of the intersection and the police pull up, they're not gonna fucking harass you and like ask for your ID. They're just gonna keep on driving. You're having a good time, whatever. Um,
You know what? I just want to end this on a little bit of a tidbit. I've been to that West End hotel. It's also the hotel that they use in the Bourne Supremacy. So that's it's just kind of fun
haven't seen.
seeing that place. I know you haven't seen that yet, but for some reason it's just a very recognizable hotel, and it's kind of awesome that they shot there. Especially like I don't know how much this movie costs, but it
That'd be a
definitely has
lot.
that independent spirit throughout.
Thanks for listening. We hope it's been a pleasure. If you like this show and you want to hear more of our wonderful voices on a weekly basis, check out 2 Cents. I'll recap what's happened in film, TV, and tech news.
We're also on the titular Dollar Review Show, a spoiler-free critique of new releases or anything we've discovered on our own, whether that be TV, music, etc.
You can find all of our content at dollarreviews.net. Follow us on Twitter or like us on Facebook at Dollar Reviews.
And we're also on Google Play Music, iTunes, Pocket Cast, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, just about anywhere on the internet with hours of content available to you for free. But for those of you that feel that the show is worth your dollar, you can send us a donation at patreon.com/dollarreviews. Contributions not only earn our undying love, but they also make it possible for us to improve our recording equipment and to give you the highest quality episodes possible. But more importantly, they'd be helping us acquire the content to review. Trips to the multiplex are expensive, and the more donations we receive, the more films we can review for your listening pleasure.
If you listen somewhere we're currently not available, you'd like to contribute some talking points, send a Death to Cinema request, or if you just want to laugh at us, you can do so by reaching out to us on social media or send an email to brian@dollarreviews.net.
Or you can email me as well, steve@dollarreviews.net.
You can follow me personally on Twitter at Brian Gillis, that's BRYONGILLIS, and now you know how to spell the email too, and also under the same name on the lovely site Letterboxd, which acts as my film diary, where I rate films I'm watching, write the occasional review, and even sometimes compile lists.
You can also find me on on Twitter at S_MTX, and also follow my film diary at Letterboxd under the same name, where I log everything I watch and sometimes write brief reviews.
That's it for this week. Until next time, keep the change.